in Netflix and Facebook, they really test you on your soft skill programming skills as well. Data engineers who focus a lot more on privacy side as well, they will be in high demand. Future, what I see that data engineering will be slowly merged with software engineering again. I would say just don't set these big tech companies or any company like as your dream job, because once you end up getting that, sometimes you can have that imposter syndrome that, oh, you didn't deserve it, maybe you were just lucky or this and that. This is a very common phenomenon actually in big tech companies.
For so many people, cracking big tech companies like Google, Meta, Amazon is a dream come true. And when you go on Google and search how to crack these companies, all you'll find is how to crack the interviews for these companies. But there's more to this than just interviews. And there's nobody better to ask these questions from than somebody who has actually cracked one of these companies. I'm your host Anushka, and in this episode, we'll talk about a career in big technology companies like Google, Meta, Amazon, etc. And we have with us Shafiqa. Welcome to the show, Shafiqa. I'm your host Anushka, and in this episode, we'll talk about a career in big tech companies. And we have with us Shafiqa. Welcome to the show, Shafiqa.
Thank you so much for having me.
Um, Before we got to this call, we were talking briefly about the questions we'll discuss and whatnot. So the very first question I have for you is that why even think of a career in big tech, and what do people generally expect when they think about a career in big technology companies like Google, Meta, and etc.
All right. So I get this question a lot, and it can vary from company to company as well. And this is a relatively newer track in big tech companies as well. Previously, it just used to be like a software engineering role, or either you were a data analyst. But now they are redefining this track as a separate one, specifically in if we see it at in Facebook or Amazon. So the reality would be there are it can vary from a small company to a big tech company, whereas in big tech company it's more defined. There's a separate track for it. Your role, your key responsibilities and OKRs are well defined. And then at the same time, you're not wearing as many hats. For example, in small companies, I have noticed that people are also working as a DevOps engineer, infrastructure engineer, at the same time working as a data engineer, and then calling and also doing the SWE work as well. So this is something that you see in big tech companies, that your role is well defined and you're working at such a big scale that you get a lot of opportunities. For example, you get to work on different technologies, open, maybe open source or internal ones, and then the growth and surge of data is too high that you really test your limits in there.
I think this is more of what realistically people should expect when they think about a career in big tech. But for people who are only just starting out the research, or who are just starting out thinking that they want to this setting up that goal, what are generally the expectations or the myths around a career in big tech? It might not be that great a picture in reality, but what do people generally think when they think about working at Google or Amazon or Meta?
What I have normally noticed that they make it like a dream job, and then when they step into the real job, it's a bit more client facing as well, as opposed to real software engineering. It is definitely a software engineering role, but definitely you are working for key business decisions, and where the stakeholders can be your clients or the senior VPs that you have. So it can involve a lot more client facing than you expect, and that is something that people usually don't expect. And when they come into it, they realize, oh, it like you have to have those soft skills as well, and then those communication skills that drive these initiatives. And at the same time, it's not very well defined what you do as a data engineer, because what I have seen, there are two tracks. There is like this businessy side of data engineering, where you are interacting a lot more with key stakeholders and business focused persons. But on the other side, there is a technical side where you are working on the back end, you're building these pipelines and infrastructure, and you don't interact with these sort of people. So I think when they are stepping into it, they should understand what they really like. If they like being a bit more communicative, or on the business side they like making these sort of decisions, they can go into this other business sort of data engineering track. But if they like being a software engineer or just building these pipelines and infrastructure, then they can go into more technical or backend sort of role.
As I mentioned, there are two tracks to it, and I think for some people it might be even a deal breaker. They're really not into communicating to people. They're not that comfortable, or for some
Hmm.
people it can be a language barrier. For some people it can be a confidence issue. So now that we know that this is something that actually happens when looking for a career in big tech, which is that there's a business side to things and there's a technical side to things. Coming down to the key skills that somebody should have, or they should look into inculcating in their personalities or their skill sets, what would be the soft skills as well as the technical skills somebody would need when it comes to applying to these companies and setting these companies as their goal?
All right, so that's a very interesting question, and whether you are on the business side or the technical side, there is definitely an overlap when it comes to these skills. So whenever you are stepping into data engineering, learning about databases, learning about how to interact with databases like SQL, and then doing scripting programming in Python, either Java or Scala, it is definitely helpful. And learning about cloud providers, because these cloud providers have definitely helped us a lot when it comes to data validation and machine learning workflows. So, and nowadays, all of these data engineering workflows are being driven on cloud anyway. So, learning about cloud computing, how can you manage this infrastructure, that definitely helps. And on the other side, you should have quite some grip on how to interact with a Linux server, how does the networking work, because you will be uh, implementing a lot of infrastructure on cloud anyway, so you need to understand how does the networking side of it works.
Hmm.
And then on the side you can just grow a lot, because these are the basic skills that you need, but on the and these are enough for you to get into a data engineering role and pass the interviews. Once you can you sort of understand how streaming or batch pipeline works, and scripting side and Python and all that. And then you sort of build on top of it. For example, you learn container orchestration, and then on the DevOps side as well, which is not really needed. These are advanced topics, but you can definitely build more on top of it. For example, learning about data modeling, data governance, machine learning workflows. These are something that are extra, but just building the basics is fine for you to get into data engineering roles. And also, since it's very huge, you don't need to learn everything about everything. For example, what I see, that people start learning about data warehousing as well, and then streaming and batch pipelines as well, and then DevOps as well. They merge all of these different things, which are basically specializations. So what you can do is become really good in some one track and just know a bit of have some bit of breadth on the other sides as well. For example, what I do, I focus a lot on streaming pipelines. I know a bit of batch pipelines, and I know some things about data warehousing as well. But what I'm really good at is, I would say, streaming pipelines. So you can find what you like, and then you kind of excel in that.
So you briefly brushed upon, really, some technical skills, be it specialization or some general skills. You also talked about some of the soft skills, like, communication, basic. I think these are the soft skills
Hmm.
that anybody would need, be it any kind of role, because even if you're not
Yeah.
facing the client, you need to communicate internally with your team members or with other, your colleagues. Something that I came across when I was researching for this episode was, what kind of content is out there when it comes to cracking big technology companies like, again, Google and Meta. Something that was very common was interviewing,
Hmm.
how to go about when you sit for the interview, how to prepare for the interview. So I think it would be an even better version, or we would have another angle to it, asking this question from somebody who's actually cracked one such company. What would your those three tips be, or three things to avoid and three things to do when it comes to just acing that interview with a company that is a Google or a Meta or an Amazon?
Okay. Initially, what really helped me was working on diverse projects. So before being interviewed by Google, I was working on projects related to website development and then DevOps as well, and a lot of them involved cloud computing as well. So I already kind of knew how networking works and how building these pipelines would work. So I kind of it kind of helped me in system design interviews, or just building those system architecture diagrams when you are going through those interviews. The only thing that I really had to work on was my software engineering skills, like coding problems, and then learning on the communication side as well, which you can do definitely. Like, it takes 2 months or 1 or 2 months. You can brush up your programming skills. The thing that has a key difference between data engineering roles and software engineering roles is that with data engineering, they will test you on system design or your knowledge about databases or SQL. So these are the additional things that they will test you, and then they what they can do, like even if your programming is not 100% amazing, they kind of like I mean they can bargain on that. That's what I'm just saying, that if you're really good at on the system design part and on the programming side, you are good enough, you can read and write code, and that's good enough as well. But not all, they won't judge you on the sweet bar. That's what I have seen usually, but it can vary from company to company as well. What I've seen that and read about is that in Netflix and Facebook, they really test you on your soft skill and programming skills as well. So it's basically the same interview that you go for software engineering as well. So I would say just check before, like which company are you interviewing for, and then you will get an idea. But definitely focus on your system design part, and learn about the role as well. Just think, and because there is definitely a role related not interview as well, which they conduct usually, and then there is general software engineering that everyone has to go through.
I think I completely agree with you there, because if you have worked, if you have that kind of hands-on experience with something,
Yeah.
it instills you with the kind of confidence when it comes to the technical aspect of your interview. And then soft skills, as we just talked about, it's something that you really can't miss, and
Hmm.
it's omnipresent given any kind of job role or a company. Something that I'm curious to know is that now that you've mentored the kind of people you've mentored, you've worked with the kind of people you've worked with, what's a question or a couple of questions maybe that you get asked very often, and this is something that you feel that this is, it might not be related to this topic, but something that you get asked very often.
There's this one question that I get asked very often is that what's the future for data engineering now that there are LLMs, there is a lot of workflows are being automated, generative AI is here. So I think what they are interested in to learn, will it be obsolete or not? So what I generally say is that in future there will be a lot more focus on privacy driven data engineers, because what I have learned that, for example, there's an example in 2017, Equifax servers were attacked and their like user data was leaked, and it was like 150 million users in US. So users were really scared that okay, this will happen again, and now people are really focused on around the privacy of their data. So data engineers who focus a lot more on privacy side as well, they will be in high demand. And secondly, I would say brush up your coding skills and cloud computing skills, because in future, what I see that data engineering will be slowly merged with software engineering again, because the data ingestion part or data integration part would be automated a little bit, but the software engineering part can't be automated that easily, and then the soft skills as well. So you can definitely learn more about cloud computing, because it automates a lot of workflows for you. For example, data validation, machine learning, or just like data ingestion side as well. So you learn more. If you learn more about cloud computing, it will enhance your portfolio. And then there is like another I would say specialization coming in. For example, LLM driven data engineering, which like this is a new field rising, and if you can look into it, that will also help you, because I think that's where the future is also headed.
I think this was a great episode for people, men and women, because I've often heard that when it comes to tech, there are women are less than men. They get paid lesser, I think, and the amount of women in these tech roles are also lesser. So I think this can be a really insightful episode for anybody actually who wants to crack these organizations and just wants to learn in general, from somebody who's already done it. um,
Hmm.
Another question I had was that, for so many people, these companies are the end goal. So these are what they, dream companies for them. And these are the companies they've been preparing for relentlessly. What would you say about, what if now you've cracked? Now you've entered these organizations. What now? Where does it go from there?
I think there is no limit for humans. Like even if you are at the top of your field, you will still want more. So there is no limit to that hunger, or I would say greed or anything. So I would say just don't set these big tech companies or any company like as your dream job, because once you end up getting that, sometimes you can have that imposter syndrome that, oh, you didn't deserve it, maybe you were just lucky or this and that. This is a very common phenomenon actually in big tech companies. So people, when they start thinking like an imposter, then they don't generally do well in their future roles as well. So that's what I would say. Just build your own brand, work on your own skill. These companies will come after you, like Rancho in 3 years. So I would just say the same thing, that don't set such a high bar for companies, because then at the end of the day, you have seen what happened in this year as well, like what a lot of companies did. So if you are someone who had set this high regard and put these companies on high pedestal, then definitely you'll be heartbroken, and then your passion will just go down. And if you are passionate about the field, not the company, then you'll do amazing work anyway.
I think it just needs to be treated as a stepping stone in your career.
Yeah,
And you always aim for the best thing for your career. And once you get it, you do your best, and then you aim for the next best thing. And I think
exactly.
it's never a good advice to settle. Maybe you get into Google, but then there's no point settling at Google if you can see something that's better and you don't want to move on to the next best thing. So thank you so much,
Yeah.
Shafiqa, for doing this episode with us. And I think this is going to be very insightful for our listeners and viewers. And I hope we get to do another one at some other point, related to some other experience of your career. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, and I'm so humbled, and I'm so glad that you guys featured me. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Top Connect. If you have any questions related to the episode, feel free to check out the links in the description below. As promised, here's your chance to win a one-on-one call with our guest. All you need to do is talk about the top 3 learnings that you got from this episode on any of your major social media platforms, and don't forget to tag TopMate. Also, if you're listening to this on Spotify, don't forget to check out the questions and the poll below. I'm your host Anushka, and you were listening to Top Connect, an educational podcast by TopMate, hosted and produced by me.